are just displaying the disclaimer, just in case. Okay. Yeah, Amit, start, man.
All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody, to another weekly recap of the Palantir, or I guess we're calling it the Palantir Weekly Recap. That's what we're calling it. Yep. This week, we are on Sachin's channel and see a lot of people in the chat. We're going to give it another 30 seconds. Doug, Gary, hello. Midwest, hello. RM, hello. Sareem Prakash, Casey Beckles. A lot of things happened this week in Palantir. We had Shyam do an entire conference with the Morgan Stanley conference, and that was a whole 30-minute interview of a lot of different gems that I believe he dropped that we're going to analyze. Just yesterday, Alex Karp released a new shareholder letter detailing the response on Palantir's official formal response on what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. And also, we had our very own Kris Patel make a piece of content that went a bit viral in the Palantir community this weekend. Code Strap, hello, and we're going to be analyzing that. I think it's fair to start off with the biggest news of this week, which was Shyam Sankar's essentially 30-minute interview that he did with Morgan Stanley. This was an interview with the analyst that put the price to $16. I believe he downgraded it from 24 to 16, but upgraded it from underweight to overweight, something along those lines. And there were a lot of questions that were asked, a lot of answers that were given. I think this interview was in some ways better than Alex Karp's interview at Stanford, just based on the level of detail. So we want to analyze that. So Sachin, I'll start off with you. I think let's start off with first the governmental business, because that's the big thing here. What were the things you heard come from Shyam's mouth around the governmental business, and how did you think it impacted your perspective on Palantir?
So I think the most important part that Shyam mentioned in the government business is like how about the lumpiness part, which we have discussed. That he said that practically what we are seeing is that there are 3 to 4 months window where all the contracts are being assigned. So you don't expect it to be like quite a smooth business. That was first. The second thing I think he mentioned and kind of didn't got a lot of traction is he said that they are working very close with government on this crisis and everything else they are doing. Okay, we also saw what happened on the constellation side, what happened, what Russia was trying with SpaceX and things like that. So he was very clear that they are preferred partners with government, and they expect this business to grow. And there is no reason, there should be any concern. Of course, it will not happen like what is happening in commercial picking steadily, because it's more strategic in nature. Okay. Also, they started government business earlier. So technically, they are already, in terms of reach to customers, they are already 80-90% there. So what they need to do more is to increase the penetration in customers, helping them more. All the governments are going to spend more on cybersecurity, in terms of AI, in terms of how the data is used. And with all this, like, sanctions are coming up. We saw what happened with Russia-Ukraine crisis, the sanction. These are like compliance things. So banks will be exposed, companies will be exposed. So you need softwares, and you need software today. It's not like it goes 6 months to build something. You might end up with a fine of $500 million. So I think it's in a macro sense, that's pretty solid, and that's pretty much what Shyam kind of summarized as well. Over to you, Kris.
Yeah, I think Shyam did an amazing job of describing the partnerships that they're trying to develop with the governments in Europe. A lot of the governments had, I don't want to say an adversarial role, but they had somewhat of an adversarial role because of local politics in not adopting Palantir a little bit more readily. Now that the shit's hit the fan, they've pretty much had to kind of rely on Palantir, because Palantir is one of the few companies that actually has forward deployed engineers that are willing to go into crisis zones and make a difference, right? That is their culture. That it takes time to build that kind of culture and get employees that are willing to do that kind of work. So Palantir is way ahead of a lot of people. The other thing that I found that was awesome that he said was, we're not waiting around for them to pay us before we start helping them. A lot of people, especially if you worked in the government side, that the bureaucratic nature of getting financing to get any project done is really difficult, right? Because it's just a bureaucratic nature and the processes that have to go through just to get something done. So Palantir right now realized that, put together everything at Palantir's cost, and that's why it's important for Palantir to have that $2.5 billion nest egg, so that they can work on things without having to burn, without having to literally wait on how do I say, like pretty much do work without that cash coming in right away, right? It gives you that flexibility to operate. The other thing, and it's very important, is that now Europe is starting to act like almost like interconnected military that they were supposed to do way before this, right? The goal was to be more interconnected. Right now, this crisis isn't affecting one country or two or three, it's affecting all of Europe. So how does that play into Palantir's hands, right? It ends up seeing that Palantir is one of the few companies that can actually take all this data from all these different sources and combine them together and make a unified map where all the allies can share that data together and actually make the difference in realizing value. So right now, all these countries that may have had, like, not, I don't want to say a negative opinion of Palantir, but an indifferent opinion of Palantir, now they realize that, hey, you know what, this guy with the crazy hair was absolutely right. We need them more than we thought we did. So I think it was great. I like the fact that they focused on that. One of the things is, during times of crisis, you've got companies that are like backing away. They're not trying to do more. Palantir is like, no, crisis is where we do our best. So let's get in there. Let's get it done. And it just goes to show that even during like the Afghan evacuation crisis, which company stood up and worked with the U.S. government to get all these people vetted and out of the country in like the shortest period of time? They called in Palantir. These guys literally took a train from New York Gotham headquarters to Washington, D.C., and were coding applications on the fly. So I think the true value of Palantir, just like Alex Karp says, it comes during times of crisis, and this is a time of crisis, so let's see what happens.
When was when they left to go to Washington for what mission?
Literally during the evacuation, when the Taliban were coming into Kabul, they were struggling. They're like, how are we going to evacuate one U.S. personnel, but then all of our allies that had been fighting with us, right? Like our Afghan partners there, because some of them were on kill lists. So how do you get them to the U.S.? It's a huge undertaking logistically. Well, guess what? Palantir ended up sending its engineers to D.C., working with the State Department and all the interconnected agencies to get vetting done live while these people are being transported out. Because the last thing you want is a terrorist getting into the country via an evacuation, right? So it's not just to say like, hey, let's take anyone and everybody and bring them to the US and evacuate them. It's like people who have helped us, right? So how do you know people who have helped us? They have to have documentation. They're included in certain databases, in contractor databases, right? Because a lot of the people that we had in Afghanistan on base, they were hired via contractors. Like the government doesn't hire people. The government hires a contractor. The contractor hires the locals, right? So all the paperwork, all the HR stuff was not with the U.S. government. It was with all these other companies. Sometimes the government had dossiers on people and information on people, but at the end of the day, all that stuff had to be taken, put into just a giant ball of information, and then cast it and give it to the State Department, so the State Department can say, yes, you're allowed, no, you're not allowed, So almost, and think about it, they had to do that on the fly. I'll send you the article later. We can review it on one of our videos in the future, actually. Very cool operation. I'll tell you what it's called if you want to look it up.
Yeah. I had two thoughts about what he said about the government. Number one was this idea of so the federal government just passed 1.5 trillion in spending. About, I think, 700 billion is for defense, if I'm not wrong on that. He said that has to be spent by July. He says it's a yearly budget. By September is when it must be spent, but you can't spend it by September because you have to have these contracts done by July. So his wording was that creates volatility on the upside, and that Palantir should be able to participate in that volatility on the upside. Now, we're not going to see the results of all the deals they get likely until Q1 2023, maybe Q4 2022. But that level of volatility, given increased spending, given Germany puts $100 billion more into spending, 2% of their GDP, given what's going on with Russia, Ukraine, like it would seem weird if Palantir doesn't benefit from everything that's going on, especially given this Alex Karp shareholder letter. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It seems like they are prime to really go for the government, which begs the question, and I think this is the next logical transition, on Cathie Wood. I mean, Cathie Wood's thesis was that she sold because there's de-accelerating governmental growth. What Shyam was talking becoming the software prime for the government, which is like the established contractor that then has subcontractors under them, but they're the ones that get the big money. It seems like that thesis is incorrect. So are us three guys on a podcast with 30, 40 people watching, are we correct? And is Kathy wrong on this governmental question?
See, I would say that the answer of that only time will tell. It is very clear that we are in different opinion than Kathy. There are a few things like, see, I made it very clear that when Kathy sold in a $10 to $11 range by Kathy's own fund mandate and how she calculates the value, she's saying that Palantir should not exceed the market cap of 36 billion by February 2027. Okay, if that happens, I mean, it doesn't matter what any one of us say or what Palantir does, Kathy will be right. But if Palantir exceeds 36 billion, and if it exceeds significantly above 36 billion, yeah, even if they lose government business or they are not the prime commercial player, Kathy will still be wrong. Because at the end of the day, she's running a quantitative fund. So the opinion only matters in the numbers context. So I think the idea is very simple. February 2027, Palantir market cap is significantly above 36 billion. Kathy is wrong. If value is below that, we are wrong. I think it's a straightforward decision for me to judge, and we have 5 years timeline. I think one thing which I kind of reflected back and I realized that nobody's talking is, see, Palantir consistently claim to tackle and solve the world's biggest problem. Okay. A lot of companies actually don't. I mean, a lot of companies you go, they say, oh, we can do infinite scaling of your cloud capabilities. We can provide you cost efficiency. We can provide you security. We can provide you cutting edge AI. A lot of companies actually don't claim that they are solving the world's biggest problem. And this is to me something which is, and we don't have to take anyone's word for it. We can see what Skywaz is doing. I mean, it is fair to say that the work that the US government, CIA, and the Defense Department does, it's a cutting edge in its own. So actually, a lot of companies are not claiming the same thing because they know they cannot deliver it. And that is where the government business context is very important, because we saw, and Kris and I shared it earlier, there was an article where Palantir and Raytheon were selected to provide the prototype for the same contract. And Raytheon is working with like 8 different companies. Now, if you are as a Raytheon and your partner is C3AI, which is literally a $2 billion market cap, I mean, you can make C3AI dance on your tune whichever you like, because they are not partner in equal sense. Okay, they are not. So that is what is different. Like when Palantir is partnering with government, they are partnering directly. So this whole idea of being prime narrative or prime software provider, and they are established. Nobody claims like, no, people don't go and say, oh yeah, we use Palantir for this problem and we failed. Okay, people are unhappy for Palantir for different reasons. Okay, but nobody says that. And even like people I have mentioned several times in past, people who hate Palantir, they say, oh dude, I mean, this is too much power in somebody's hand. So when Palantir says that they are solving the biggest, the most complex problem, yeah, nobody is actually trying to copy them. Like even the companies who are trying to say, oh, we are like Palantir, even though they don't claim that they are solving these problems. They say, oh yeah, we can do it, but nobody claims that they have done it. That's very different. Very different. Back to you guys.
Yeah, I think that's how Shyam was speaking on the call as well. I mean, he was speaking, it was a lot more different than Q3 earnings. He was a lot more relaxed. Instead of like being a real cheerleader, he was just answering the questions very clearly. And the governmental business, I mean, they obviously asked them, the concerns around 90 customers in Q4, 2020, Q4, 2021, not big change. And his argument was primarily, look, they haven't passed the budget. Once they pass the budget, volatility on the upside. As you said, Sachin, they are trying to solve the world's literal biggest problems, which we'll talk about in a bit with Karp's shareholder letter. And I think that's a really good point, because a lot of other companies are not claiming to solve those problems. So, it gets me excited every time when I think about my investment in Palantir, because I'm like, I'm really investing in a company that has flat out said they will become the most important software technology company in the world. And I think that the Shyam interview did a really good job at articulating why. A couple other things from the Shyam interview, the SPACs thesis. A lot of SPAC stuff has been going on. He commented on them. His argument was that out of the 30 net new customers that came out in Q4 2021, I think we all expected this, but none of them were SPACs. He says that the SPACs market likely peaked. They're still going to be doing strategic investments, but not through SPAC deals anymore. And he essentially claimed that the reason they invested in SPACs was because those SPACs will be using Foundry the same way that companies were using AWS and Azure, except instead of using cloud computing platforms, they'll be using Foundry as the technical foundation for them to build applications on top of into the future. How did you guys think about his thoughts around the SPAC thesis?
I think Chris, you go first, man.
All right, yeah, I thought it was a great thing that he said. I mean, at this point, a lot of people have lost faith in the SPACs, right? So not a lot of SPACs are coming out. So how do you get around that? How do you figure out, okay, what are we going to do to increase our business, but at the same time not be so reliant on the SPAC parts? So right now, they, without even having to justify their investments in these SPACs, they just said, look, these SPACs were a thing. These are one-time deals. You've pretty much seen the peak of it. He pretty much downplayed the SPAC part of the revenue, right? A lot of people thought that they were buying revenue, but let me tell you, once again, a lot of companies do this. A lot of companies actively go out there, especially in early seed stages, invest in companies so that not only can they benefit from the equity gain on that company if it goes to a super high valuation, but they're also, you get your software entrenched into their operating system, right? So that way, Palantir right now, I think, will start moving more into the almost like a VC role. And it's happening all across. I think right now, Databricks is also investing money into some of these smaller startups, right? And believe it or not, the companies actually came to Databricks and said, hey, can you help us? Can you invest in us, right? We love your product. Invest in us. And Databricks was raised, I think, 1.3 billion. They didn't even need the money, but they raised it because they wanted to invest in, not the SPACs. I think they were just startup companies. So go ahead, Sachin. Sorry about that.
No, I think, like I said earlier as well, see, one of the things which the guys said, I mean, the Morgan Stanley guy said that Palantir has invested 400 million in their strategic investments. Okay. And Palantir already has revenue coming like 50 million. So that gives you a burnout rate of like 8 years. Now, we have discussed this in past that the kind of companies Palantir is investing in, they are not yet in their prime. So if these companies are not yet in their prime and they're already making 50 million as of revenue, like pure dollar number coming out of it, that's already good. Okay, I mean, it's like 12.5% return on your investment. Okay. The second thing is, despite what has happened in terms of a growth market decline, and despite all these companies will be successful or not, some of these companies will go and make significant gains in their valuation. So there is going to be financing gains from equity as well. But the major game, I think, because like I said, it's a strategic investment. They want to be sure that in a given industry, which is yet to go mainstream, Palantir already has products and established position that these industries will grow at a very rapid rate. Okay, I mean, like 4 or 5 years back, nobody was talking about BNPL. BNPL is $100 billion plus industry. And by the time this decade will end, BNPL will be over $1 trillion industry. Okay. So the way people look at these things is, okay, so first thing is these are strategic investment, and strategic investments, when are done, there are two objectives. First, of course, you want appreciation on your investment, but that's not the main goal. The main goal is how this investment create business opportunities. And this is how it happens. Like, for example, if you're a large company like GE, GE has presence of technical sales force globally. Okay, that means if they invest in a small startup and they like what the product is, they can really hyper scale globally at all the places. That is one way to do strategic investment. Another way to do strategic investment is that you don't have that kind of reach globally, okay, or in a certain industry. So, for example, if GE says that we do not have presence, say, for example, in eVTOL industry, then they would like to make an investment there because they want to, because technical sales force is useless here. They just don't have presence in there. So this is how the strategic investments are done. Every company is doing it, be it Databricks, be it AWS. I mean, I applied for AWS. I had a chat with my friends for Google. I had chat with Foundry for builders. I had chat with Snowflake. The programs are different. I mean, I had chat with some large MNCs in energy as well around it. Everyone has it. Just because how your company is structured and what your strengths are, the nature of these investments are different. And Shyam explained that why it is like this in case, because they want to ensure that Foundry is used in a sense where it creates maximum value. And especially when we say from zero to something that is already running, that is one. And second thing, they did it because they also wanted to ensure that by doing this, they're also getting a piece of the pie for the value they create. Okay, so that's how I think about it. And yeah, I mean, if they don't do SPAC and the SPAC is losing traction, okay, but it doesn't mean that all the SPAC mergers were bad. I mean, it really went on overboard. And yeah, I mean, it will correct. And SPAC, guys, you have to be very clear, SPAC didn't start 2 years back or everything happened. SPAC exists in industry for a long time. It just got a more traction during this time, thanks to Chamath. And also thanks to Chamath, I mean, we can say it sank well. Back to you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think what he said about when he compares Foundry to AWS, that's when I get excited, because I'm like, oh shoot, they are envisioning a world in which they have created a technology, a platform, an operating system that every single company is going to build on top of. And this is just like this basic sense of business. Like, like we are content creators on YouTube. Who makes more money, us or YouTube? YouTube, the platform that has the content, versus us, the creators on the platform. So when you're the foundation of anything, you're always going to have more potential upside just by controlling what's being done. And on top of that, again, I'm going to bring it up. The SPACs are exciting. You've got electric charging stations. You've got connected vehicle data startups. You've got placenta-based stem cell therapy research. You've got electric jets. Like, you've got so many different interesting companies that are actually doing really well. The SPACs actually this week, some of them got to $9.50. They got to the entry price that Palantir ended up paying, even though the market has been depressed. You know, we'll see if that lasts. But nonetheless, I think the SPACs were exciting, and I'm happy that he asked him that question, because Shyam really cleared it up. He was like, look, Snowflake has a venture capital arm. Databricks has a venture capital arm. The reason we did it through SPACs was because we wanted to get equity. SPACs were hot at the moment. These were emerging companies that were finding a way to go public without doing the traditional IPO. We participated in the pipe, and now we have an equity stake, and we'll see how those companies go forward. Additionally, the number one thing to understand about the SPACs, again, is that it's pure marketing for them. If those SPACs end up succeeding, and Foundry is the reason why, those SPACs become industry leaders, and then Palantir's software ends up being the fundamentally the reason why. I think the next thing we wanted to talk about in the call was the go-to-market strategy, right, Sachin? So any comments from you and Kris on what Palantir's go-to-market strategy is in the future, and how they actually achieve this $16 valuation long term?
So I think they should have $16 valuation at this particular time without doing anything. So I disagree.
We
with
just got to
Morgan
get to this
Stanley.
Morgan Stanley analyst expectation.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, analysts they have to tailor made their recommendation for a lot of things which are not financial or real valuation. But anyways, see, one thing which I would like to caution everyone who is invested in Palantir is, see, Palantir has shared a vision that they want to be like AWS. Okay, they have product to match it. The question is, do they have strategy to match it? I mean, AWS is a juggernaut. I mean, we can criticize on a lot of things on AWS, but guys, AWS is juggernaut. They have dedicated education programs. They have dedicated reach to sales, to B2B. They have certifications. They have books. They have programs. I mean, they are just huge. So if Palantir has to become the AWS of software prime to build for these enterprise, Palantir has to create these avenues. And unless these avenues are created, yeah, it's a vision. I mean, more than a strategy in action. Okay, that's how I see it. So I want to see, like CodeStep has also discussed in past, we want very strong developer community behind. We want some education and certification program coming up. We want more and more testimonies coming from their clients. We want, like, I want to see, I mean, try, guys, I mean, go to YouTube and find sometime like events like AWS re:Invent. I mean, try to go to these events. You will see the buzz around it. You know, when you go to these events, you say, man, I don't care if Google is better. I like AWS event. I like the community here. I want to be the part of this community. So they need to create that kind of buzz. So I really like the ambition when they say that they are going to be the AWS in this decade, or AWS, what AWS was in previous decade for developers in this decade. And they are also right, because AWS is all like these pieces in all over the place, and you need to figure it out how to put them together. And a lot of time these pieces actually don't work together that well, or the way they work together, they create a lot of pain and a lot of maintenance. Okay. So having the strategy is right. He also mentioned something which he said that there are three key capabilities that what separates Palantir from rest of the softwares. And he first said that the marginal cost of data integration is effectively zero. So I just want to explain what is that. So for example, you deploy Foundry and you do all the initial data mapping and everything is done, your data ontology is done. Now you want to put another source, another stream of data, you can literally do it at zero cost. That's what he was trying to say. Now the second thing, and this thing has troubled me for a very long time about Palantir, and the reason for that is, and I'll explain. Let me explain it. See, he said the second pillar for Palantir to be a world class product is that the application development is pretty much also on very minimal marginal cost. Like I explained the concept of marginal cost just now. See, when Palantir was working earlier in government domain, I have talked to at least one of my friend who was working in DARPA and who was involved. I mean, he had some unhappiness with Palantir, and he said that every time they needed to update, they needed someone to come in and to work for them. Okay, so the product in the past was not as modular as it is today. And if you go back 3 years and before, you will not see listen Alex Karp and team saying modular product, modular product. I think they now have realized that they need to meet their clients where their clients are. Okay, it's not like okay, it's either Palantir or nothing. Okay, that's what the approach was, and that is what they have struggled. They are changing it, so it's just a start of something. Okay, that's why you will see that nowadays there's a lot of focus on modularity of products, because they realize that this is essential to tap this market, and it didn't exist before. The third pillar he mentioned was that since you can literally connect all of your data sources and all of your employees into one place, you can literally get your digital twin, like functioning digital twin. It's not like dashboard, it's like a digital twin that tells you in real time how to make decisions and what are the trade-offs in this decision. Okay, this is like the ultimate holy grail. And he said that these three pillars, there is no match. And I agree with him, there is no match. Because if you cannot match these things, yeah, I mean, you will say, okay, we are the infinite scalability company, we are the cost efficient company, we are this company, but you cannot claim that you are the company that is going to solve the largest problem. So in go-to-market strategy, there were a few things also which was very critical. And I'm glad that they are accepting it. And I'm telling you, like, Palantir has been very hard as in the past accepting these things. Okay, like things like the nature of their relationship, because I said Palantir always had this top-down approach where they will meet executive first and IT team last, and IT team create this passive-aggressive approach for them, where they sometimes they just don't succeed at time. So they are accepting it. I mean, this is what we want a company to. It's not only about having a good product; it's about having the right head to lead the company. That yes, we were wrong. We want to improve on it. Our product was not as modular, but in order to succeed, why their product is modular now? Because they realize that's what their clients want, and that is what is making me more excitement. I mean, exciting about the company. But like I said, I mean, they have laid it down the strategy map. Now they have to show the evidence moving forward. Okay, back to you guys.
So for me, I would say that the way that they did the sales was really weird, because I don't know what their reasoning, why they would limit themselves so much. So the way that he explained it was there's only two ways that you can get Palantir into your organization. You either bought the full product, right, and you did an enterprise license, or you bought it for a use case, right? And the way that I would describe it is like buying a car, right? Either you buy the car, right, or you rent the car to go from point A to point B, but you can't go anywhere else with it, right? Now they're switching to a point where it's like, let's do a system where pay as you go, because a lot of companies like that traditional model. That's what AWS does. That's what the other major cloud providers do too, is that you only pay for services that are meaningful to you. So if Palantir is successful and people become used to it, that just means that the revenue is going to grow higher and higher, right? Because people are going to be paying you to use the product. So I think that optionality is going to open doors to a lot of organizations. The other thing is, I work in healthcare IT. One of the things that we hate is being kind of like things going over our heads. it's great that you want to do executive to executive meetings, but then you go to IT and guess what? That executive comes to us and says, hey, you're going to adopt this product. If it's not something that we didn't give a blessing on, there's one of two things that's going to happen. One, we're going to throw a monkey wrench into your adoption. Okay. Whether that means that we'll technically not support the product as much as we should, we'll slow walk all the tickets we get about the product, or the end users, when they reach out to us for anything, instead of pointing them in the right direction, we'll just say it's not my product, not my issue, right? And that's really bad, because that means that then people will be critical of that product. So you have to get IT engaged, even on some level, so that this way IT can say, you know what, we're your partner in this. Because at the end of the day, who's going to end up supporting this product 24/7 when Palantir is not 100% there? Like, you think a forward deploy engineer is just going to sit there all day long answering questions from every end user? No, you're going to need super users on site. They're going to be willing to address some of the leadership and even the people on how to deal with things. So I think the approach that they're going with now is better. That they're saying, you know what, we need to open ourselves up. The other thing is, they really need to stop with the secrecy nonsense. Nothing that they are doing right now requires the level of secrecy to the point where it's like, oh my God, we're fixing everything, but we want to keep it a secret. Dude, stop with the secrecy nonsense. Get your product out there in people's hands. Like right now, if I wanted to work with Databricks, do you know what it would take me? Nothing. An afternoon. All I have to do is sign up. I can get a light product by next week, ready to go. I'm not like, oh no, we're a super secret company, we have all this proprietary stuff. Look, I'm sure you have some parts of your software is very proprietary, but it's nothing that is going to be like, oh my God, like the end user is going to steal and build something yourself. It's too complicated to build. So I would say Palantir is going in the right direction with regards to sales. The question for me is going to be around, can they capitalize? Can they execute on that? It's great to talk about these things, say, oh, we're going to change the way we're doing sales. We're going to hire more sales staff. But at this point, are you so far behind that you can't catch up? Are all these other people going to eat your lunch while you're working on pivoting? Because now they're almost in a back foot a little bit, right? Had they done this strategy prior to IPO, maybe 5-6 years ago, when I wouldn't say 5, maybe like 3 years ago, when Foundry was starting to really take off, they would be in a much more stronger position right now, and their feet would be in a lot more doors right now. In which case, now we would be seeing a much more scaled up approach. So I think right now they are still moving in the right direction. Everyone is okay. Everyone is confirming that. I'm liking what I'm hearing, but for me, it's always about execution risk. Every single company has to have a level of execution. And one thing, and I please, everyone in the comment section, I love Palantir, but at the end of the day, Alex Karp needs to eat some of that humble pie, which I think he is, and get on board and say, yeah, let's start opening ourselves up. Let's get this done. There's a video that I'll do later in this week that if you guys saw it, you'd be shocked. You'd be like, what the hell? Like, you can't treat your customers like they're optional, and that's what they did in the past. That is, it literally bit them in the what do you call it? They stepped in it. They stepped in it with that kind of thinking.
Why do you guys think 3 years ago, when they were innovating Skywise and they saw all the progress they were like, so here's the question. Do you think when they created Skywise and they created an entire platform, an operating system for an entire industry, they got, let's say, so arrogant that, because the industry adopted all of Foundry, not a slice of Foundry, look what we were able to create. That's how we should go to market over the next couple of years. And that kind of led them to be so reserved to modularizing? Or do you think there was some other reason why they made this $80 billion mistake 5 years ago?
To me, it's arrogance. It's a lot of arrogance on their part to say that we're doing the best, like we have the best.
Did they deserve that arrogance because of Skywise?
I don't think for every success that they've had, especially like Skywise, look at Signac. Their product with Credit Suisse, total burned. Like literally, that was an entire write-off. Credit Suisse, they lost their CEO, and even like some parts of their leadership were completely wiped out because of this product. I'll do a video about it. because like I said, look it up. It's something called Signac that Palantir was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. And guess what? After people started using it, it was like, oh, we don't need it. This is not a good product. And guess what? It burned down the entire product. I think $50 million that they put in completely went to waste. So for every success story we keep hearing about, like, oh, Skywise, and like BP, trust me, Palantir has failed too. There's other products, and I'm going to do some more videos about the products that they've failed either to capitalize on or was a strategic blunder on their part on how they went to market. The other thing is you also can't be overly reliant on your counterparty, right? One of the things that they always do is like, oh yeah, we'll find one industry partner and that industry partner will work with them, we'll create a joint venture, and then they'll end up, scaling it to all the little people in their industry. Well, guess what? If your counterparty sucks and they don't do a good job, your product is going to look like crap too. Because it's not just to say, let's just keep building, what is that thing called? Let's just keep building on top of Foundry, but you also have to make sure you're building good things on top of Foundry.
So I agree with Kris 100%. Actually, if I could say more than 100%, then that would be the best way. See, Palantir started with government, and they started working with government, and government was way behind how SaaS development is done or any software development or procurement is done. So they started with a certain mindset. Okay, when they came to commercial, I think they borrowed some of that mindset here. Okay, that how things to be done, and we will dictate how things to be done exactly. And I know, talking to some of my friends, that working with Palantir was a pain in ass at some time to a lot of people. Okay, so the thing is, so they always like a mix of like a overconfidence or a confidence or a pride or an arrogance. They said that we know how to solve things. So the reality was, people said, okay, I mean, you are pretty good in tech, you're pretty good in philosophy, but you lack in sales and business, and this is how we work. So now the part is that they kind of started accepting it, and they took actually longer than they should have been. I mean, they have said it themselves. So I hope they executed well, but that's the execution risk we need to see at this particular point. The good thing is that now their product strategy is focused on what their client wants. Initially, their product strategy was focused on, oh, there is a big problem, I need to solve it. And they were like pretty much focused on working from end to end, and they were building these products. See, nobody has time anymore to build products like Skywise in that long as it used to earlier. People want things running now, because if you cannot do it, and that's what, I mean, Palantir also claimed that they can get these things running in no time. I mean, in their demo of HyperAuto, that's what they're saying. And people are doing this 3 months pilot. We can show you value in 1 day. So now their focus is actually quite different, and they have managed to adapt to their product. I can assure you on this part, like the evidence I see 3 years back, their product was not that modular. Okay, they may have a modular product, but this product was not modular enough to adapt to the client ecosystem. Okay, now you see they're partnering with Big Bear AI, who has significant overlap in terms of what they do. Okay, in terms of a lot of other companies, I mean, I've talked to them. They are okay. I mean, they don't care like they need to partner with the Data Robot or they need to partner with Snowflake. I mean, it's a kind of a competition, but a symbiotic relationship that is developing. You say that clients are not going to replace it. We need to see what client already has, how best we can put Foundry in that, and it helps client. So that is very different, and that has just started, like in 6 months, 8 months, that they are talking to it, and they have a sales force now, because the message we understand, but a lot of B2B clients still don't understand. A lot of B2B clients still don't know what they do, how they do. So let's see how it all goes from that part.
Do you think they will be able to modularize and scale the product, given Shyam's new attitude of how the company, like, do you have faith they will be able to execute, or are you kind of just like, I'll see if it happens?
So
we all have faith to be invested, right?
Yeah.
But like,
yeah. So I'm comfortable in terms of the modularization of product, because we are seeing the evidence of it, like Foundry for crypto, HyperAuto. These are like kind of the evidence, okay, that they can really modularize. Okay. Whether they will be successful in doing this and capturing the largest market and monopoly, at this time, it's not the most likely outcome. Okay, because we have to judge based on what they have done in past. I mean, learning a mistake is one part, and you can actually execute it with a perfection. That's a whole different story. I cannot call it a base case. And that's what I say. I mean, they are on a good track to grow, but they are not yet on the track to become the monopoly as we expect them to be. This is how I think. Back to you guys.
My philosophy on this one is going to be around the developer community, okay, and the adoption of getting more people to be able to be comfortable using the product. Okay, what that means is they have an opportunity with me for the next 2 years. I think if they don't expand themselves in the developer community to the point where I think that more people are going to be open to using them, I don't think that I will be a shareholder after that. I can only give a certain amount of time before the other competitors are going to catch up and eat away and literally you're just going to be sitting around trying to figure out. And I'll be honest with you guys, and I said this to you guys privately, but I'll say it publicly. The day Databricks goes public, I'm probably going to sell half of my Palantir and buy Databricks, because Databricks, the one thing that they have on their side is execution. They are executing like nobody's business in this space, and their product is good. They're executing well. The CEO is dynamic. They're getting to the point right now where they are surpassing Palantir in terms of execution, not in technology, but in execution, yes. So instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to have all my eggs in the Palantir basket in my AI section of my portfolio, no, I'm going to spread it out. But I'm going to spread it out to someone who I think is doing well. The one thing I hope everyone here realizes in any industry, but software in particular, the best product does not always win. Okay, let me repeat that. The best product does not always win. Okay, a lot of times there's been great products that have come out, but if no one uses it, no one can adopt it because it's so technically complex or it's too thick of a thing that, you know, people don't like or don't get used to, it will die on the vine. Okay, and eventually you'll end up being, you know, you'll end up cannibalizing. People will end up cannibalizing your market share, right? In which case, then you're struggling and you're always trying to catch up. So I think right now the best thing Palantir can do, really pivot, really lean into this, but really, really take that developer community seriously and get that ball rolling as quick as possible. Some of those YouTube videos, I'm glad that they're doing it because they're giving the opportunity for people to see what they need to do. But guess what? They need to do more than that. I'm hoping now over the next 2022 and 2023, they're doing conferences. They're doing on-site certifications. They're doing conferencing certifications where people can get certified. And that's one of the big secrets of any industry. So here's an example in my industry, in healthcare. One of the things that people covet is this thing called EPIC certification. If you're in healthcare, if you get EPIC certification, you're guaranteed to get $100,000 job, as a clinical application specialist, right? What's really cool is that the only place where you can get certified is through EPIC at their headquarters in Wisconsin, right? And you have to have a company sponsor you to go there to get that certification. But once you get it, it's like $100,000, right? So everyone and their mother right now is always advocating to get EPIC into their hospital system so that this way they can get EPIC certified. I know that sounds weird, but this way they could get EPIC certified so that it makes them more marketable in their community, right? In the healthcare community, in their healthcare IT community. Like for me right now, like, dude, if they offered me EPIC certification, I would take it in a heartbeat. Like that's how prestigious it is. And I hope Palantir does the same thing where they're like, you know what, come everyone, get EPIC certified. Just as long as you work at a facility, at a what is that thing called? At a business that owns or that not owns but has a partnership with Palantir, come and we'll get you certified, you know, and let's see where things go.
You know, one thing which I realized, and I worked on large scale enterprise data strategy project and implementation. You know, a lot of people who act in the corridor as MIT PhDs in data, okay, I mean, they are as good as a high school physics or mathematics student. That is the reality. People are projecting them far better than they are. And this is where Palantir struggles. They bring a professor who is teaching MIT PhD on nuclear science and talking to people who are like in class 8 and just trying to learn what a radioactive isotope is. So they need to understand, like a lot of people who are on the enterprise side. Uh, See, every company is not Facebook or Google. That software programmers you have or IT guys you have, they are the smartest. You have a lot of average guy and below average guy who end up working in different kind of roles in a lot of enterprises. Now if you start going and you're talking to them as a super smart person, you need to come to their level. I think that's the thing. You need to tell them that how I am going to help you, why my presence is going to make your life easy. Because if you come come across as someone what Trump will call like a braggadocious or something, is like the guy will say, "No, dude, I don't want this guy. I mean, he can eat my job." So there's a lot of context in B2B. So they need to sort those things out. You know what they need to focus. You cannot correct all of your mistakes. Okay, they have given ground to companies, and these companies they need to focus on a very simple thing, that our strength is that we can help build our client products faster than anyone. So they need to focus and getting it done. If they are getting it done, eventually, okay, everyone will start realizing and everyone will start picking on it. Back to you guys.
Do you think Databricks could be the competitor Kathy's talking about, given they're private?
So yeah, I mean, I have to become a bit discreet here because there is an NDA I just signed last week, so I have to be careful what I say now.
Sachin always signing these deals, bro, all the time. He's got all.
No,
this
I'll be working on a data strategy project for a large MNC. So in London, so that's pretty much my next 2 months are going to be. See, Databricks has a valuation last I checked was 38 billion. So let me just first split the valuation versus the company. Okay, when the company will eventually IPO, I would expect company to go down in. I mean, because valuations are really cooked in the private, especially in the data space. So that's pretty much. So I'll not be buying the IPO of Databricks. I'll wait for 6 months, 8 months before the carnage happens and the lockup expires before I try to buy it. I like Databricks as a company a lot. Okay, but Databricks, like CodeStep has said, they are just another piece of the wall. They are not like okay a whole. But why companies like Databricks are important? Because they are meeting the clients where the clients are. They ask client, you are doing some data use case, what is your problem? They say, oh, we are struggling on this piece. They say, okay, this is how we can solve it. They don't go and claim that we are going to solve your largest problem. They go and they ask, what is your problem as of today which you want to solve in next 7 days? That's a very different strategy of reaching your client compared to what Palantir is doing. Palantir is going to executives and they say, okay, what are the biggest problem you are looking on your table? Now, Databricks, as Kris mentioned, like it goes to an IT guy and says, how can I solve you? Can you get me a work order of 75K? Okay, so they are working in a very different dimension and a very different cost range. So they are moving 1 inch at a time. Well, Palantir has tried in past is why don't we go from one mountain to another mountain? So that's the challenge. So, like I said in past, like this, you cannot understand the value of Databricks and Snowflake until and unless you talk to their customer. When you look on paper, you say, yeah, Snowflake is not that special. I mean, AWS, SageMaker does, BigQuery does the same thing. You need to talk to the people actually who will tell, dude, my life is so simple using Snowflake. So until and unless working level guys going in open and saying, and the developer community is saying, dude, my life is so simple building products on Palantir. I would not have done anything like this on AWS. Until and unless we have those people going and saying, yeah, there will always be a question mark on Palantir. Bless you, Amit.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay,
all right.
back to
Makes
you
sense to me. Anything else you wanted to talk about from Shyam's call, or can we move on?
I think we can move on to the letter, Alex letter.
Okay. Let's start off with Kris. What were your thoughts on the letter on Ukraine?
I'll be honest, I didn't really read that much of it. I just didn't have time. I'm one of those people, like, after a little bit, I was just like, okay, let me do something else. I was really busy this week, so I didn't read all of it. I read the first half. It was just him saying that, hey, listen, we're in the right position to help you. That's that's what I got out of the first 10
So
seconds
I
of
have
reading, and
a
then out.
yeah. So I have a reflection on this one, and it is my observation, and guys, you might have a different observation on that. Palantir is more open now to accept their mistake and accept who they are. Like what happened in the time when the ICE attack happened, and people in liberal areas like New York, they said, "Oh, we want to remove Palantir." I felt that Palantir actually got a bit defensive. Okay, they were like literally not talking about things which can create any sort of controversy and stuff like that while they were maintaining their philosophy. But I think now they realize that, see, there is no way you can satisfy everyone. You stand for what you are. And if they stand for what you are, you need to speak openly about it. And Palantir exists because they have a vision and a view on the future. And that's what they are sharing. They said, this is who we are and this is how we are standing. And see, we said to everyone that we are a company that is going to protect the Western values of democracy. Okay. And in this crisis of Ukraine and Russia, here we are. And Shyam said the same thing. Also, Shyam said at this particular time, our focus is to help our government clients. We will worry about later how the bill is raised or not. Okay. So when I looked at this letter, I mean, the good part for me is that Palantir is actually not trying to fall into this culture where a lot of these companies are falling into, that they have to endorse every popular topic every week. They say, no, we are only going to endorse things which aligns with our long-term values and principles. And this is Palantir, this is who we are. You like it, you don't like it, but we are they are not trying to pretend something. I mean, I have been in meetings and people will say, okay, I mean, we need to improve our ESG rating. And you will go and you talk about them and you say, okay, I mean, these are, you can do. Say, no, we need to just do something fast. Why don't we endorse few things here and there? And they do endorse these things few and here, and then you go and you see that their ESG ratings is improved. So these companies are not doing, I mean, they are faking things. But that's how things are. I mean, if you're in Silicon Valley and you are in New York, Wall Street, you can just go and speak about popular things every week, and you are popular and you will have a lot of sentiment going for you. Palantir is saying we are not going to be the part of that culture. So they are silent on a lot of things, okay? But when they need to speak, and I like this idea of Alex Karp writing these letters, okay? Because you cannot summarize. I mean, you cannot go on CNBC and you can speak frame your philosophy like this. So they made it very clear. This is exactly who we are. This is why we exist. So when the crisis is there, guys, we are going to be in the front line. You like it, you don't like it, we don't care. So the message was very clear, very blunt, and it only resonates with people who believe in Palantir. Everyone else will be furious on it, to be honest. Back to you guys.
Yeah, so I'll take this one as well. I agree with everything Sachin said. I think some of the stuff that Coach Strap is saying in the chat as well. And Sachin, you can probably get rid of the letter. You can just go to our faces now. We've seen some pretty bad policy over the past 20 years with what's gone on in Europe. And I think what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, the nature of the letter, there were a couple of elements to it. Number one, it's a philosophical letter. And the reason it's a philosophical letter is because it's trying to esoterically put out into the world, while also not being that esoteric, and esoteric is just another word for vague, that there are problematic things that happen intergovernmentally, which is what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. And Karp's thesis, he started off the letter by saying, we thought that democracy and freedoms were going to solve these problems. And yes, there's some bad actors, there's some dictatorships, some authoritarians like China and Russia, but the majority of Europe is democratic. And as a result of them being democratic, things like 2014 with the annexation of Crimea, that can happen, and we can have 8 years of stability and the world will be okay. And then Karp's next paragraph is like, well, we realize that's not how the world works. Because when you have a dictator and he's able to take one part of the world, he's going to want to take more parts of the world. And when you're getting 50% of your oil from that dictator, Alex Karp doesn't say this, but he kind of implies this, then it's going to be very difficult for you to just have a stranglehold on that dictator, which means the world will be chaotic. And this is exactly what he said in the Stanford interview in December, which is that they are prepping they're prepping their technology for a world that is chaotic. Well, now the world has become chaotic. COVID was one major example. That was a random example, and Palantir stepped up to the plate. They stepped up to the challenge. and they knocked it out of the park. In fact, they got an entire $34 million 2-year contract with the NHS, which is the nationalized healthcare system that most people say in the UK is a pile of crap, to be honest, because of what they were able to do with COVID vaccine distribution in the United Kingdom. And just a year and a half later, you have a geopolitical event that is absolutely insane. And the question becomes, what companies are there that have technology that are on the front line, that are not hiding away, that are not shy, that are not saying anything political? Because if Google says something political, or and China's doing something, then China gets booted out of Google. They don't get certain contracts. Palantir has been obvious. They're like, hey, we're not working with these guys. So this letter to me was very adamant, coming from Karp, saying, we're the guys that are going to solve the problems. It was a level of arrogance, but it was a level of arrogance that was justified given the current crisis that's going on. His argument was like, hey, we've said since the beginning that we're here to protect civil liberties. We've said since the beginning that we're here to combat terrorism and not destroy civil liberties in the pursuit of combating terrorism, which is an extremely difficult thing to do. You don't stop terrorism if you don't interrogate your citizens and have a lot of data on them, and they built the tech that is able to get the best of both worlds. So Karp's sales pitch in this letter was like, we're here. The time is now. If you were ever going to invest in more defense, if you were ever going to digitally transform the entire infrastructure of your government to come to a point where you will realize that the world is chaotic and you need technology at the edge that is able to handle those crazy things that happen in the world, it is now the time to do that. The question becomes, is this letter going to be enough for the European leaders that are, because it was aimed towards Europe, that are reading this to say, hey, we're going to go with Palantir over anything else? And that's the question where, going back to our conversation, Databricks doesn't make sense, or Snowflake doesn't make sense, right? Snowflake is not, hey, we're going to protect Western democracy. We're going to stop stuff when Ukraine-Russia happens. And that's why I pick Palantir over Snowflake. Because I'm like, okay, Snowflake's growing more. They have a really good product. They're scaling a lot more. But are they the guys that philosophically, and I believe maybe it's a little naive, but you need that philosophical foundation to become a $100 billion, $1 trillion company. Are they the ones putting themselves out there saying, Europe, we will protect you when things go bad? They're not the ones doing that. Databricks is not the one doing that. C3 AI is not the ones doing that. So this letter to me was a sales pitch. It was an adamant acknowledgement of things that are going on in Russia and Ukraine, which is good that they acknowledged it, because we knew Palantir was doing something behind the scenes, and this was finally their formal acknowledgement of it. And within this letter was the message to Europe that it's time for you to put some money up and put your money where your mouth is, or else another Russia-Ukraine situation is going to happen, and then you guys are going to be really screwed.
No, I think I agree. I mean, the situation is not de-escalating. It's just progressing at this particular point. It may not be peaking up further, but it is not de-escalating at this particular point. So anyone who is sitting in diplomatic corridor and expecting that it will resolve on its own, I think it has crossed that point. It needs active management, and it needs active prep. At this point, it is very difficult to say for any government that whatever has happened, based on that, we still keep our defense and AI and SaaS procurement and objective as similar what they used to be. If anyone is doing that, dude, I mean, they are due for a very big bill to come in the future. So what I like is, and as I said, I mean, Palantir is embracing more and more who they are in public now. They are not afraid. Okay.
Yeah.
And it has to do with the overall macro as well. I mean, if you see what happened over the last 2 years, the liberal politicians have made some tactical mistakes. They were too much in support of certain narratives, and people actually pushed back on them. Okay, so the people are asking more questions back. Okay, sad. I mean, 2 years back everything was bad because Trump was there, but dude, now you are in the party. I mean, you are the government. I mean, why everything is bad now? Okay, so people are asking back questions. Okay, and there are a lot of opinions on that part. But thing is, when people are asking questions and Palantir look back and they say, okay, guys, we are not the bad guys in their own view. So yeah, we just embrace who we are, and that's what they are doing.
I think Sachin just said Trump was right. That's what I got out of this whole thing.
Man, Trump is not my leader, so I can never endorse Trump. But
I'm pretty sure.
The way you be tweeting about Biden every day, you would think you're an Alabama hardcore. No, I'm just kidding with you. But no, it's an interesting point Sachin brings up, is that Palantir got mixed into the narrative with Trump in 2017. A lot of Vice media Vox Media articles claimed Palantir was the devil because Trump was in office, and the Peter Thiel relationship, all that stuff. And then Trump's gone, and arguably the world is chaotic. And it's not trying to get political here. It's just like, well, the world is going to be chaotic. Like it was chaotic with Obama, chaotic with Trump to some respect, and now it's chaotic with Biden. Things didn't go away just because the foreclaimed devil, I'm putting that in quotes because that's how the media framed him, is out of the office. So now Palantir is like, wait a second, all these people that were complaining about how we are part of this whole, right-wing, alt-right-wing problem in America, now the liberals are like, hey, we need better defense spending. Hey, we need better simulation. Hey, we need better predictive analytic tools to be able to predict things. So now I think Sachin's point is Palantir is embracing the narrative that it is okay to say the word Western values out loud. Because in 2017, it was not. It was deemed as you're a racist. And because they're embracing that value and they're making content about it publicly, and companies are using them, there's a world in which they can actually have a vital value.
Now Amit's sounding like a Trump supporter, bro. What is going on here, bro? Just say y'all are Trump supporters. Just say it.
No, I'm actually, it's not even to get super political here. And it's not, I was not the biggest Trump fan at all. Trust me, there were a lot of things from him socially that I didn't enjoy. But nonetheless, I didn't like the narrative that when Trump was in president, he was the most evil person in the world. Because it's not even about Trump. When you set the expectation that high, there's nowhere else to go. And when someone else comes in office and shit hits the fan, it's like, are they the most evil person in the world? Obviously not. So it's a hard double-edged sword to bite. But I think Palantir is starting to embrace, wait a second, the world was shitty when Trump was in office. We had a bunch of immigration problems. The world is really shitty when we have Biden in office. We have a bunch of inflation problems, a bunch of geopolitical problems. Can we, and this goes to their point, can we be the product that is neutral? They have never taken an administrative or political, they are the only company I know that has never said a political statement. They have worked with every administration since the Bush administration, and they said, hey, we're here to protect Western values. We don't care who the president is. Because Western values in this day and age, it is very obvious, are better than most values. Freedom of speech is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're defending that, and I think and I think, the other thing about this CARP letter, it speaks to me because I'm very philosophical, I'm very poetic, and I don't like the arrogance all the time of them thinking we don't need to sell because we have the best product. But in these moments, the arrogance is like, hey, you guys need something to protect yourselves. You cannot expect the world to be I mean, let's say, I think, America said there's no more oil coming from Russia. Let's say now Europe has to make the decision that they can't get their oil from Russia. Instantaneously, this is what Karp talked about in the Stanford interview. Businesses have to redo their supply chains. Logistics have to change. Energy needs need to be met. All of these are data problems. And if those governments had implemented Foundry, if the biggest companies in the world in those governments had implemented Foundry, these problems would have a much easier way to be solved versus not being able to solve them. So this should show an acceleration of Palantir's business. And this entire letter was like, hey, we're here. It's time for you guys to step up to the plate and actually use this.
See, one thing one of the reasons that I support Palantir is, I'm not a big fan of this kind of political narrative from anyone. Is like that you can make somebody untouchable. Okay. That's what is the challenge is like between the two parties, and not in US, in a lot of places, that the way media works and the way politics work is they just make certain people and certain ideas just untouchable. And then anybody who is like even borderline attached to them is like, this is why Palantir suffered. Palantir suffered because a lot of people were not able to embrace the fact that Peter Thiel is supporting Trump. Instead of having an open discussion with Peter Thiel that why, what are you doing it? If anybody has followed Peter Thiel from 2003 onwards, Peter Thiel was very vocal that what are the things he's looking and what are the things he's looking in terms of society and why he's not happy on certain things. I think I don't think it came as a surprise to anyone that why Peter Thiel went that route. But anyway, I'm not a conservative. I'm a guy who is literally zero religious value at this particular point, at least religious belief. I'm not, I believe in a spacefaring civilization. Okay. I believe more physics and math than social science. So that is my challenge with the both groups. I don't fit in anywhere. Okay, but when I talk and see my values with Palantir, I see, because that's the idea. Everyone cannot be world cannot be binary. And that's what Palantir is saying also, that We don't care who is ruling as long as the federal institutions are strong and as long as we are able to support them. So in principle, I am with them.
And I want to make a point to one of the comments Code Strap says right here. He says, we have thousands of years of literature supporting the rights of the individual and limited government, and you can't distill that into Trump. And yeah, I think that's the argument. I think in 2017, Western values got framed as this like horrible thing to believe in. And then Trump being the face of America at that point got mixed in with that. And then Palantir being the software that's supporting Trump doing whatever he was doing, that all got put into a narrative that ultimately got fed to the world that Palantir was an evil company. Even though Western values are good, freedom of individuals is good, a limited government, I think we can all say, is objectively good. You don't want the government to be extremely tyrannical and authoritarian. I mean, that's probably not what we want things to do. Now we're speaking like from America, so we all believe in that nonetheless. But you probably don't want the government overtaking the rights of the individual, and you want the individual to do what they want, believe what they want, say what they want within reason, as long as it doesn't affect the physical safety of another individual. That basic concept that we have thousands of years of literature supporting got instilled into a dirty word when someone said the word Western freedoms or Western values. Palantir did not shy away from that in 2017, 2018, 2019, which is why they continued to work with the federal government. Now in 2021, where we have a Democrat in office, they're seeing that, oh, we still have problems, and they're like, hey, let's actually embrace the narrative of Western framing. Whereas 2017, 2018, I don't think they were that public about it as well. Now, granted, they also weren't public, so that's probably another reason. But we are definitely seeing a change in that respect.
All I know is I'm going to have to pray extra hard to Ganesh for the both of you, bro. That's what I'm going to have to do. Come on, Ganesh, hook me up with this Palantir getting to $30 concept, man. Ganesh got your back. All right. I'm just kidding. You guys can be as atheist as you want.
Yeah. So I think the reason I think we went into this discussion is the context. Is Palantir is a company that will be benefited by a certain macro and a certain sway of opinion. And what I'm seeing is that is happening. Okay. People who have been vocally against Palantir, okay, they are caught in some sort of loop of their own. Okay, where they are not able to defend and justify like different things they are doing. Okay, everything cannot be blamed on Biden and everything cannot be blamed on Trump. Okay, I mean, yeah, you need to blame some things on other people, for example, like Hillary and other guys. But that's the thing. I mean, if we make Palantir as a part of like a party or as a part of, I mean, we are hurting nation. Okay, either you say, I mean, that's what I said. If you see Palantir is doing things wrong, ask Alex Karp and make him sit in the Senate, like you call Mark Zuckerberg, okay, like you call Pichai. I mean, these guys come and they sit in there and they explain what they are doing. Ask Alex Karp to do the same. I mean, it's a democracy, it's a functioning institution. So to me, when I saw, and before we concluded, is that I'm happy Palantir is embracing more and more who they are. And at this particular point, they have realized they have passed the point of no return, where they can go back in bed with the Silicon Valley. That door is closed. They are in a league of their own now. Okay, so we'll see how it goes.
There's no company in Silicon Valley saying the word Western values and freedoms out loud, even though they believe in it, right? Obviously, Google believes in free speech. Well, kinda, right? They just took down the Trump podcast off YouTube. That was interesting. But nonetheless, most of them believe that freedom of speech is good. But Palantir is one of the only companies that's effectively saying it. And now here's the thing. If the upside of this defense spending in Europe doesn't go to Palantir, I'll be very upset. Because Palantir is the only company, literally, that is out here saying, we want to protect you from bad people. We are reducing our TAM because we're not working with those bad people. We're the ones. And if those governments go with cheaper solutions, for whatever reason, or Palantir can't execute on the Salesforce, that will be very upsetting in the next couple of quarters.
It's not only going to be upsetting. I mean, they'll be reporting to Putin in 15 years if they don't get this thing right. I mean, right now, see, the power and politics works in a very strange way. People create leverage where none exists. That's how. I mean, if somebody has leverage and he's not able to use it, okay, it's a bad politics. I mean, US is a superpower. They have the most economic might. They have the biggest military presence. If they are not able to use it for a strategic purpose with a greater effect, I mean, if you have something like we talk about exponential thing, we say This is a market where none and all kind of. That means if you are bigger, then you should project yourself even bigger. And if you are not able to do that, it's a strategic mistake. Now, expecting at this particular point, the narrative is that Russia will collapse. Okay, Russia will, I mean, Putin will go out. But you need to be very clear. I mean, he's a guy who's sitting on the world's largest nuclear pipe. Do you really
Yep.
want to risk that this kind of situation? Okay, 2 years back, everybody was saying, "Oh yeah, I mean, Trump is pushing world to the world war." Now, the same people are saying we should go for the World War III. I mean, today people are talking about World War because they have not seen it. Why we avoided World War for such a long time? Because people have seen the horror. People said, "Okay, I have religious belief, I have regional beliefs, I love in this country, but above and all, I do not want war." That is how Europe is created. Okay, I mean, Europe. Why Europe had this period of quietness in a certain way? I mean, Europe has seen some of the worst crimes of humanity. They have seen some of the worst wars. So suddenly, why it went everything so quiet and well? Because they saw the horror of war and they wanted to avoid it, and they realized that even the smallest event can lead to a big war, and that's how they. Now we are moving to a generation who has not seen those horrors and those crime, and they are saying, yeah, I mean, there could be conflict, but it cannot turn into war. This is very dangerous territory now.
The other thing, Sachin, is that for the last almost 40 years, the U.S., through its treasure and blood, has basically subsidized the world's protection and security. All right? I'll tell you right now, we as the US have always been the policemen and the watchdogs of the world, always protecting people, always like everyone looks to us. Every time anything happens in the world, there's like, what does the US think about it? You know, the Europeans, they took no responsibility on half of the things that happened. And you know what? Majority of the, especially if you look in Africa, so many of the conflicts there are rooted in European colonizations and the fallouts from that. But guess what? The Europeans, they just, hey, listen, that's your issue now. That's your problem now. You know, we're not, the French actually did take active roles in trying to help a little bit. But when you look at it, the US has been the primary defender of certain values. And I think we made our own share of mistakes as well, because we always want to propagate democracy all over the world because we think it's the right system of governance. I can tell you right now that may not exactly be true everywhere. As much as I believe in democracy and I love democracy, I'll fight for democracy for the US. There are certain countries around the world which are more stable because of what their current system is, right? I'm not saying that, you know what, everyone should have a dictatorship and everyone should be communist. I think the people have to choose what they want. And if it's something that ends up being detrimental to them, then they need to stand up and change that. We cannot, the US cannot be the only ones going and trying to change things around and then getting the blame of it. You know how many people right now are still blaming us for Libya, still blaming us for Syria, still blaming us because we brought instability to the entire region, right? Because of what? Because of Iraq, you know? You had a madman trying to oppress his own people for the longest time, but everyone accepted. I don't know. Geopolitics is one of those things that's a very difficult was a very difficult topic because there's so many nuances that are involved with it. My opinion of war has dramatically shifted from when I was younger and to when I'm older right now. Like when I was younger, I always thought, you know, the US, they're always going to do everything right. Everything is about, you know, freedom and democracy and everything. And I was part of the military. I was part of one of the reasons why I joined was I wanted to be part of a solution. I wanted to make a difference. And as I stayed in for as long as I did, I started to see some of the cynical things that I didn't agree with. Some of the things that I'll tell you that I wasn't a big fan of. And you can ask anyone who's a vet, like Afghanistan was probably one of the worst tragedies of how not, there is an entire book you can write about what not to do for the U.S. like for any country when they go into a country. Instead of propping up like better leaders, we accepted leaders who were corrupt, fundamentally corrupt, and then we said, well, you know what, this guy is really bad, but at least he's our friend. So you know what, let's keep supporting him. And what happened? The day that the Taliban were outside of Kabul, instead of standing his ground and respecting his country and actually defending it, what did this dude do? Took 2 suitcases full of cash and bounced out of there. You know, look at him versus Zelensky, right? Who right now in the middle of All of this nonsense. What is he doing? He's literally staying and saying, no, I'm going to fight. I'm going to do what's right. Those are the kinds of leaders that we should have been supporting in Afghanistan, not these freaking people who are just basically are puppets, So I would just say this to you guys. Geopolitics is so nuanced. I'm good.
What are the chances we get into a nuclear war, Sachin?
Still,
I saw a report today says that it's about 10% from a very reputable.
No, I mean it's negligible. I mean, in my view, still it's negligible. Okay, I mean, see, people don't. I mean, I think a lot of people have forgotten that countries have already written plans what to do in the event of nuclear war. Okay, if a nuclear war happens, all these cabinets and all these committees that the governments have, they are pretty much ineffective. You have to follow the protocol. It's a red alert situations. Okay, it's very easy to escalate the situation. And if a nuclear missile is launched from one country to other, okay, for whatever reasons, it doesn't matter how smaller the nuclear warhead is, it will break the wheel, like why we cannot use it or why we should not use it opposite the country, because people will say we need to penalize this country which has done the nuclear strike. Okay, this is still the world we live where an eye for eye is needed for a lot of people. So nuclear war, yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying because people are smart enough or they are mature enough to go for that. Yeah, people just don't have balls for it. No one has balls for it. No one wants to deal with it.
But you don't think if Putin doesn't get what he wants, he'll be like a child, like, okay, the world doesn't get what they want then? And
see, I mean, what's going on his head? I mean, it's anybody's guess, but this is how I think is. See, and I mean, I have never met Putin. I have only saw him during the interviews and tried to assess it in terms of communist and Russian culture context. On one hand, I mean, nuclear weapon is the biggest power he has. But he also understands very well, in my opinion, that if a nuclear war happen, Russia will be on the receiving end. Okay, yeah, you can kill a lot of people. I mean, like, why China and India cannot go for a full scale war? Because, yeah, I mean, one country will win eventually, but both will give each other injuries and bloody noses that they cannot recover. Both will lose in a global sense. So same thing is like Russia will be annihilated if nuclear war happens. So the question is he going to take the risk of annihilating Russia?
Well, at that point, I feel like he wouldn't care, right?
No, I think yeah.
If he doesn't get Ukraine and this doesn't end the way he wants it to end, does he become a child like they're 3 years old and like, if I can't get it, no one can get it, and he just says, all right, civilization is over.
He will not sacrifice Russia in a physical sense against for Ukraine. I mean, that's my view. I could be wrong, but that's how I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you're wrong, all of us are dead. So hopefully you're not wrong on that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy.
I don't think we're going to nuclear war at all. I think the chances of that happening are very slim. I'm actually, believe it or not, worried about destabilizing the Russians. I know that sounds stupid, but right now, no matter what, Putin is at least in charge of everything. At least I know that sounds like, what do you mean? Are you supporting Putin? No, absolutely not. But at the end of the day, you don't want a civil war in Russia where crazies might end up getting access to nuclear weapons. Okay. It's one of the worst things that could happen to any country that's nuclear capable is they have an internal civil war where the wrong person ends up getting access to pretty much to nuclear weapons. And there was a saying in this movie from George Clooney, and I love that quote about nuclear weapons. I'm not worried about the country that has 1,000 nuclear warheads. I'm worried about that one guy who has a nuclear warhead.
Right? I remember that one. Peacemaker.
So that's the most important thing, that right now the Russians, they're still stable. The nukes are where they're supposed to be. But if the country goes unstable and somehow, some of the nukes, they get sold on the black market somewhere and terrorists get their hands on it,
Yeah, I mean, that's the story plot of almost like 200 Hollywood movies in last 25 years.
All right, we have 68 people watching. I wish we had one more. because we need 69 people to talk about this final topic. This is
We are
what I've been
69.
waiting for an
We are
hour and 20
69.
minutes. Let me set it up this way. Tuesday morning or Tuesday night or Tuesday evening, I get a notification from none other than Kris Patel. Uploaded a new video. I'm like, hey, let's go see what video my brother uploaded. Video title: I found the Palantir competitor Kathy Wood is talking about. I didn't watch it because I didn't have time with them. I was like, whatever. An hour later, 1.4 thousand views. I'm like, I love Kris, but he's not getting 1.4 thousand in an hour. That's not Chris's channel at this moment. So I'm like, people must really be interested in this little title that Kris put this video up for. I still can't watch the video because I was at work on Tuesday. I didn't get home until 9:30. Next thing you know, I get home. I do a live stream, late night stock talks around 10 o'clock at night. And I just have a ton of comments in this live stream. There's like 30 people saying, hey, did you see Chris's video? Chris's video, Chris's video, Chris's video. I'm like, all right, let's watch it live. I go and I load up Chris's video, and there's a company called DataWalk. And DataWalk has established a white paper on their website that says they are the Palantir alternative. They can do 75% of what Palantir, or 100% of what Palantir can do for 75% of the cost. And Kris basically does a reaction to them, and the subreddits start talking. My Discord starts talking. Everyone, my YouTube comments, they're like, hey, Amit, you got to do a reaction to this DataWalk. So let's start off with you, Kris, before we get to Sachin. What inspired you to make this video? How did you come across DataWalk? And why do you believe DataWalk will run all over Palantir?
Well, first of all, I don't believe DataWalk is going to run all over Palantir. So let's just get that out of the way first. One thing I realized is that I've never seen a company so publicly, like, their entire messaging come out that we're an alternative to another company, right? So they're ankle biting. They're basically living off of that. So I was like, okay, let me take a look. Let me see what it looks like. Let me look at some of the stuff. And what I noticed was a lot of the UI looked very similar to what Gotham looked like. And then I looked at it and I was like, wow, you know, IBM i2, they actually do. IBM, by the way, sold their i2 notebook. But they're also, that was the other thing too. So a lot of the products that they were making looked very similar. Now, I know some of the comments that we got were hilarious, that this looks like the Wish version of Palantir Gotham, which is absolutely right. But
bro, the video was so bad. It didn't even have good music underneath it. Like,
well, either way, one of the things I do want to highlight that there are use cases for these little guys. Okay, there's to completely say that Palantir is 100% the best thing in the world. No one ever needs anything else. Trust me, these guys will find a use case. Being a small company does not automatically make you like worthless, you know, especially if you. And then what really interested me about these guys, it was that they actually have some partnerships with some federal agencies. It wasn't just like, oh my God, they're just saying stuff. There's actually a few people that they've convinced that they are a Palantir alternative. And from a pricing standpoint, hey, look, if the government can do something 75% cheaper and get the same results, why not try? You know, so I was like, okay, let me look this up. And like I said, they call themselves the Palantir alternative. I wouldn't necessarily call them that. But like I said, the product looks okay to me. But maybe some other people can chime in. Let's see what you guys think. Go ahead, Sachin.
So I came to know about DataWalk last year, okay, and I have mentioned this several times. Like there have been several companies that have come across as like a cheap Palantir version. Okay, I never specifically said the name. See, this company has 2 patents that were granted in 2030. 2. That's it, guys. Okay, the evaluation is. I mean, I was checking, and I cannot show you my like official PitchBook account, but I mean, if you go and if you have access to PitchBook, you can see what is their revenue look like, how many. They have 12 documents, and out of this, like 10 were like papers. Okay, they have only like 2
their
patents that has been
incorporation
granted
paper.
to them. Okay, Palantir gets like 5-6 patents. I mean,
Every week.
every like a week. Okay,
They got 6 on
so
March 8th that I couldn't make a video on because there was so many
yeah,
videos.
so they have raised capital, I think less than $25 million until now. They do not have, like, if you see like IL1, IL2, IL6, I mean, they are not IL5. Okay, so they are nobody. Okay, they are literally nobody. When a company comes to me and say that, oh yeah, we are a version of this, these are the companies I remove very early from my filtering process. And so, yeah, I mean, they have got some contact, but guys, they are nobody. Okay, and the reason they are trying to sell like as a Palantir, because you need to create FUD. You remember this guy like Dan O'Dood who was saying he published a page about FSD against FSD. The guy had literally like less than 100 Twitter follower, and now he's spitting negative news about FSD every day. He has like 20,000 viewers. So we all know like negative publicity is also publicity. Anyone who is using data walk and expecting to use it, so I mean they are, I mean I would, you'll be surprised what I'm going to say next. I would take Esri data ontology platform as a better competition for Palantir geospatial data ontology platform than I will take data walk. So guys, in my opinion, yeah, guys, I'm not losing my sleep over data walk. I mean, there are a lot of other companies I would like to lose my sleep. I mean, I see, I like Cognite, I like Harness, I like Data Eco, okay, I like Databricks, okay. These are the companies I would say that yes, they will compete in certain aspects of it, but data walk, no, it's
You
not
know,
happening.
you know what happened when Kris made this video? My initial thought was like, all right, we're all kind of stressed out around the stock price. We all down. Sachin's probably down like 9,000 figures, given his portfolio. Kris is probably down six
Not that
figures.
much, man.
I'm down 5 figures. So I'm like, you know what? And Kathy sold like I don't care what anyone says. It's annoying when someone liquidates 30 million shares for whatever reason they did. But the reason was there's a private government competitor. So when Kris found the answer, all of us were like, maybe he's right. And I wasn't losing too much sleep over it either, but I was thinking about it because it's like kind of annoying. It's like, what if there is this private little competitor that's stealing all the governmental deals? And then you look into context of what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, and you look at this CARP shareholder letter, and you're like, is DataWalk going to be the infrastructure of the protecting Western values? Because it has to be to get the governmental contracts, right? Like outside of the contracts with the like small IT departments in the government, like the overall big government $56 billion TAM, you've got to be that Western value freedom defender. And I don't think DataWalk's probably.
I just wanted to let you guys know they signed a contract recently with the Department of Agriculture. They're growing stuff. Okay. Don't deny DataWalk. DataWalk is coming for all of y'all.
No, I think Kris made a very good point. I think this is where I think we have to give a right.
So you can go back to our faces now. Go back to our faces.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the reasons that I think Kris made a very good observation is that why people are even talking about data work, because people do not know about Palantir. See, how many people can actually explain what Palantir does? So this is what these companies does. They go, oh, why you are going to Palantir if I can? Anybody who is going to Palantir and negotiating cost, yeah, doesn't know what Palantir is. Okay, for example, if you go to Palantir says, oh, we will get 5 million, we will pay 5 million and we'll create 100 million value for you. Now, if you are really negotiating, you will say, I am ready to spend 6 million, but show me the value above 200 million. That is how you are going to negotiate with Palantir. Okay, if you are going to negotiate, okay, yeah, 5 million, can you do it 4.75? Yeah, you are already in the wrong. Your data strategy is already failed. Okay, you are going into to create value in uncharted territories. Okay, CEOs, CDOs, a lot of these people are building use cases based on benchmarking and what others are doing. We have not yet started the era of edge computing. Okay, we even don't know what values that can be created by that. We are not into the world of autonomous vehicle. Okay, I mean, like we saw how fast SpaceX acted in the case of Ukraine, and how, I mean, we are not in that world yet where, I mean, the data and the technology is going to go, it's going to be so rapidly interconnected with each other. So anyone saying that we understand what's the use case are going to be for next 20 years, no, nobody knows about that. So
you know how Palantir says they're at the edge. DataWalk is also at the edge, but they fell off. They're just like falling down while Palantir's at the edge.
Yeah. So, like for example, I think this is what. So, I have a friend. He is running an IoT company in energy. So, the CEO came from same college as me, IIT, and I was talking to him, and we were having discussing about the different IoT edge case implementation. Guys, remind me, I have another thing to share after this as well on Palantir. So, what happened when I was talking to this guy, and he was saying that the biggest challenge we have on the in the edge is that we cannot push large enough models because the bandwidth is not there. So when they were trying to explore the SpaceX, and they said with the 5G and the SpaceX, we literally do not need, so the idea initially was that you need a lot of data to train and the build AI models. But guys, if you have a good enough AI model, you don't need to train that much afterwards. Okay, data beyond a point is going to be redundant. I mean, if the access is too much. So what do you need? You need these models sitting on the AI world where they fine tune based on the data is there for that particular context, and they keep on implementing. And there is a feedback loop, which is a longer time feedback loop that can come back to the enterprise cloud later on. So the whole idea of edge AI, how does it exist today versus what Apollo is trying? It's very different. I mean, I mean, what do you think? Like, you see the case of Dojo, what Tesla does. I mean, they train, but Dojo is not sitting in Tesla. Dojo trains a model that goes to Tesla, and Tesla car is an edge case now for it. Okay, where, I mean, then whenever we update the FSD models and all that, I mean, like, what is happening? The model that is sitting, the edge model that is sitting in the Tesla is being updated. Okay, but now every time Tesla is moving, it's not, decision is not taken by Dojo. I mean, decision is taken on the car itself. So the edge computing is going to be very different from how it is interpreted today. Back to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, go ahead.
So the Lord of the Rings, who would Datawalk be in the Lord of the Rings?
I still haven't watched it yet. I gotta watch it.
You've never seen Lord of the Rings?
How long is it?
Nobody.
Dude,
You
it's
have
not
to watch
long.
it in.
Yeah, you have to watch like how do I?
In one
Should he
go.
watch The Hobbit first? Should he watch The Hobbit first?
There's like a trilogy,
No,
right?
no,
There's
no,
a bunch of
no.
that?
No.
It's the
He has to
original
start
trilogy.
it. Yeah, he has to start with the original.
Yeah, you got to start with the original.
Chris, I need to come to your apartment one day. We need to have a movie night. We good.
Let's come through, bro. Come through. You know. Yeah. So I was just gonna say one last thing. I was gonna say one last thing before I let you guys do it. The next shareholder meeting on say.com, I'm asking Alex Karp, are you afraid of Datawalk? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Imagine they
Gonna
did
do
that. Bro,
Dude, it can't be as ridiculous as, are you still worried about share-based compensation? So come on. I'm gonna ask about Datawalk. Datawalk is my number one question. Let's get it there, guys. Let's get Datawalk trending. Number one.
First of all, Coach Rep, I remember Radio Shack as well. I think all of us here, definitely. You don't have to be old. I'm 24. I remember Radio Shack. I remember going to Radio Shack. But yeah, I mean, Datawalk, like, again, I was on my live stream. I pulled up the video and I was watching Chris react to it. I couldn't get through 2 minutes of it because my live stream got so boring. I was like, what is this? What are we watching? Like, even the music is like elevator music to explain comprehensive AI data analytics. At least on Gotham, you have this mysterious, like, you know, Palantir loads up their logo. It's like, there's like digital stuff. It's like, what the hell is Datawalk? It's like,
dude, Datawalk is Gollum. Just thank you for someone. That is perfect. My precious.
All right, Sachin, what is this new thing you have to show us?
So when Amit was saying that he remembers Radio Shack, so I need to tell you, like, when I was growing up and I was watching these Hollywood movies, I used to dream that one day I will go to Radio Shack. So I come from a different age than the Amit comes from. So
wait, Amit, do you know what Radio Shack is?
Yes, they sold like electronics and batteries and headphones. I used to go into it. There was one next to a shop right near my house. I mean, it's closed now. It closed like 10 years ago, but I remember that place.
Yeah.
So what was happening was last week was, I think, nobody talked about it because nobody knew about it. That also the SERA week was happening in US and all the energy companies were there. And yeah, I mean, Palantir had their own event there as well. I think some of my buddies ended up talking to Palantir, saw their event. I think the reaction was very positive. So I was very happy to see actually Palantir taking active participation in meeting clients directly in a lot of these events. I mean, that's how it has to be. I mean, they need people on ground, and Palantir head of energy was there, and a lot of team was there. So yeah, it's so like I said, they need to have their presence felt. So I think it is going in right direction from that part.
Yeah,
Okay, back to you guys.
I think Palantir right now energy is starting to really come as a big topic of concern for a lot of companies. A lot of companies are trying to figure out ways to become more energy efficient. So, to mitigate some of the fallout from all these energy price rises. I hope that person that they hired really capitalizes and gets into a lot of doors right now, because I think Palantir right now has a golden opportunity, because energy is making a resurgence, especially because of everything happening. There's a lot of reshoring happening with capacity that's coming probably from the U.S. now, as opposed to the Russians. So any spare capacity is well worth figuring out. So right now, all that stuff is just sitting in data. Is there ways that we can figure out how to optimize our production, optimize our transportation, optimize logistics, so that we can, be energy independent? So hopefully Palantir is working on that with a lot of energy majors. Do you know any other energy majors that are working with Palantir outside of BP?
I'm not at liberty to reveal it.
There you go. I got you. I got him, guys. I got him. He's not going to tell us who, but at least you can tell. At least you can tell they're working with more people. You see? Look at that smile. Look at that smile.
The CIA will be at your door. Now that you smile.
I didn't say anything, man.
I was trying to be sneaky about it, and but there you go. There you go, guys. I got him. If I had to guess, I'd say Total. I'd say Total from France.
Total.
Yeah.
I think was there anything else that happened with Palantir? Oh, they got this new sales guy. They got a new vice president of sales of Asia, Emmanuel or something was his name. So it's good. They have the Philip Matu was the East Africa region. They got a new guy for Asia. We saw they did a bunch of events this week as well. I'm talking to the guy who worked at Tyson Foods, who worked with the Palantir product. He's talking on the podcast next week. So we're going to get to see his experience with Palantir at Tyson. So that'll be cool. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything for this week.
Yeah. Guys, please drop some questions in the comment section. We want to hear from you guys. If there's any area that you think is really interesting that you guys want us to cover on the next podcast, let us know. We're always trying to get more feedback from you guys, so that this way we can make this a fun thing. Because I don't want to just make this into like a just us talking about stuff that we read in the news. I also want to make this a little bit interactive, so let's do it.
So I mean, yeah, and then like a couple of things happened also. Like one of their employee, that this lady got a really prestigious award in terms of like I don't remember what it was. There was this event in terms of like Hyper Auto where they actually they were showing like how fast you can manufacturing. I mean, you can scale up a used case in manufacturing. So there are a lot of things happening, and they have more events coming up as well. So I really like that they are actually helping their clients to understand like what they do and how they do. Okay, I have an NDA on his NDA. I think, yeah, it's pretty much my life, man.
Here's another thing that I'm going to ask during the say.com thing, and I think it's very important that we ask this question. When are y'all going to get the large sweatshirts? Because I go onto the Palantir website every week trying to get some of this Palantir merch, and y'all never have large. What's going on, Palantir? Get your supply chain together. I want a hat. I'm trying to get a large t-shirt, but y'all never have large. I can't wear a medium. Get me a large.
You're not a right size for being a Hobbit, man. They are a Hobbit company.
That's fine, but give me some larges, bro. Hook me up.
All right, guys. I think we're out. Thank everyone for joining. Next week, we'll see you guys then.
Sounds good.
We're out. Have a good weekend, everybody.
You too. Bye. Take care, everyone. Bye.